Imagine the San Francisco Giants finally get their long-awaited downtown stadium, and it looks like this. Welcome to 25 years of history and trivia at Oracle Park.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the plans for Oracle Park, but we haven't really talked about how we got here. The road to Oracle Park was long. I think a lot of Giants fans forget just how long and how crazy it was, and how close we came several times to losing the Giants and any new stadium chance. A lot of it started with the hope for a park close to here, downtown near the symbols of the city. But those ideas changed a lot. So, why don't you come with me? Let's start the long road to get to Pacific Bell Park. This is going to be a long video, so buckle in.
As the 1980s rolled in, San Francisco was in an era of transition, rebounding from tragedies and recession, and the city was looking for a new identity. This set the scene for how sports might factor into its future. With industrial jobs at the Port of San Francisco having evaporated, the huge industrial land in Mission Bay was ripe for redevelopment, and the mostly low-density industrial neighborhood in South Beach was ready to be redeveloped as well. And that was perfect because Giants fans at Chili Candlestick Park were fed up. In 1976, with dwindling attendance, the Giants were nearly sold to Labatt Brewing, who wanted to move the Giants to Toronto. A minority owner under Horace Stoneham, Bob Lurie, put together an alliance to buy the Giants and keep them in San Francisco. Making that deal was hard. He fell out with one partner just as the deal was passed, and then found a new partner in Phoenix, and had to fight off that partner trying to sell his 49% to a group trying to move the Giants to Washington, D.C., eventually buying that partner out.
Let's be honest. This video is not going to make Bob Lurie look like the friend of Giants fans. But you have to be fair to the man. Without him, the Giants aren't in San Francisco today.
By 1982, fans were fed up with the cold and windy Candlestick, and rumbles had already started about making changes, like this proposal to put a dome over the stick that was floated in early 1982. But by late 1982, a city-led panel researched 16 potential sites for a new stadium. Out of them all, they determined that the China Basin area was the best spot for a new sports venue.
So they picked the right site on the first try. It's all smooth sailing from here, right? Yeah. Who are you kidding?
Right away, debate about the site started. The railroad wanted to put the stadium on the seemingly impossibly skinny site across the corner from the China Basin site, along Townsend and King between 3rd and 4th. In October of 1983, Mayor Dianne Feinstein stuck with the China Basin site with a seemingly hasty proposal for a gargantuan stadium on the shores of the Mission Channel. Now, if this looks familiar, that's because it should. This appears to just be a photo of the Indiana Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, photoshopped into San Francisco, before Photoshop was a thing. By October 1983, a more tailored plan was released, which included a moving grandstand that would rotate depending on whether football or baseball was being played. And Mayor Feinstein began talking about how San Francisco needed to build or risk losing its sports teams. Of course, at this point, the city was looking for a home for both the Giants and 49ers. So they saw the stadium as a bulky multi-sport venue, born out of the concrete monstrosities of the mid-20th century. Hence, this big plan. Despite this, the plans fizzled out. 1984 saw other proposals pop up, particularly with Bill Poland, the owner of Showplace Square, suggesting a new park be built at 7th and Townsend, across from his thriving district. While the mayor suggested moving the stadium even further from downtown by going near San Francisco Airport in San Bruno. And the most fanciful of plans was published, a floating stadium on the piers, a plan that seemed eerily predictive of the original Warriors Arena plan before the current site of Chase Center was chosen. At the start of 1985, yet another new task force recommended a new site for a stadium, this time at Rincon Hill, just north of Interstate 80, right at the base of the Bay Bridge.
This site on the corner of Spear and Harrison was favored. They thought it wouldn't affect residential development as much, which is Pretty ironic, there's a couple of high-rise residential towers here now. But its proximity to downtown, freeways, the bayfront, and this movie-quality view of the Bay Bridge made it a very tantalizing potential site.
However, Mayor Feinstein began to pull back her involvement in the ballpark push, opening the door for private developers. Two different sites on either side of Interstate 80 in downtown were pushed for by two different developers. Downtown developer Peter Stalker favored the site on Main and Harrison, but Showplace Square owner Bill Poland favored one on the south side of the bridge. This was notable because it was the first push for a baseball-only facility. Unlike the multi-sport domes previously announced, the new designs would try to recreate the ambiance of Seal Stadium and wanted an old-fashioned design evoking Fenway Park or Wrigley Field, which sounded great. Poland also wanted the, quote, foundation for a retractable roof that would open like a giant fan, which sounded far less traditional or great. The Stalker plan would win out, but ended up on the South Beach site with the promise of being privately financed, partially through a limited amount of lifetime seats sold and a built-in hotel and restaurants. It featured a landmark glass rotunda that would sit in center field and be the entrance to the hotel, which sounded awesome. It also had a, quote, plastic covering that could be pulled over everything except the upper grandstands to become a convention center, which sounded less awesome.
You know, the high outfield walls would have blocked views during the game, but it's hard to argue that this would not have been the most scenic location for a giant stadium. The glass rotunda would have been right back here behind me at the corner of Brandon and the Embarcadero. And let me tell you, this view, well, it would not have sucked at all.
It was reported that Stalker wanted an ownership stake as part of the stadium plan, and that there was some level of a deal in place for it. But they never actually got the land, as the land rights were given to high-end housing developers, and Stalker ended his push to build the new stadium. In October of 1985, with the collapse of the South Beach Stadium plan, Bob Lurie said he would never let the Giants play in Candlestick Park again, and he announced a plan to share the Oakland Coliseum with the A's until a new stadium was built. Well, Oakland's mayor, Lionel Wilson, took only a day to say that the Giants weren't welcome to play in the Oakland Coliseum. And by January, Bob Lurie announced the team would return to Candlestick Park after all. Around this time, San Francisco Supervisor Quentin Kopp proposed building a new stadium at Mission Street between 3rd and 4th Streets, which you might know currently as Moscone Center North and Yerba Buena Gardens. Now, anyone who's been to Yerba Buena Gardens or the Metreon know that the downtown view of skyscrapers here is pretty amazing, at least nowadays. Too bad the Kopp plan would have had that view apparently blocked by a parking garage. That plan, which would have blocked the expansion of Moscone Center, was never seriously considered. In April of 1986, San Mateo County offered 2 plots of land near the Bay Meadows racetrack in the city of San Mateo, located right next to the interchange of Freeways 101 and 92. But soon the county would drop that offer.
But those were not serious plans. In May of 1986, Mayor Feinstein presented a new plan, one that would actually go on the ballot. And that was here at the corner of 7th and Townsend at the Caltrain rail yards, across the street from what was then Showplace Square.
This site was just blocks from the old Seal Stadium site, and in one of the then most vibrant areas of the city, on the edge of the Mission Bay redevelopment. And the plan had Lurie's support. But look at that possible outfield view of freeway off-ramps from Interstate 280. That looks more evocative of Los Angeles than San Francisco, especially considering the city's history with freeways. Feinstein said no new taxes or public bonds would be needed to build the stadium, but some of the city's existing hotel tax might be used in case of overages. But that was enough for Prop W to be defeated in November 1987. And as Mayor Feinstein termed out, Art Agnos became mayor after opposing the ballpark measure. Bob Lurie was furious and vowed to move the team out of San Francisco. He reignited talks with Santa Clara County and San Mateo County, even talking about East Palo Alto and Half Moon Bay. But San Francisco tried again, In 1989, a private developer proposed a new sports entertainment complex taking over the entire Mission Creek and Caltrain sites, with a baseball stadium at China Basin, plus an arena built at 7th and Townsend next to Showplace Square. That grand plan began falling apart quickly, as the arena was shed from it with no likely basketball or hockey teams to call the arena home. But the stadium part of the proposal was put on the ballot by Mayor Art Agnos. Agnos got Lurie on board by adding a provision that the Giants would be released from their Candlestick Park lease if the proposal was defeated. Tiny side note, in the push of that 1989 proposal, San Francisco Examiner columnist Joan Ryan brought up a new possibility for a baseball stadium there. Baseballs being hit into the bay by lefty slugger Will Clark. As far as I could find in my research, this was the very first time that what we now know as a splash hit was proposed. And just like the name of McCovey Cove, it was first proposed by a newspaper columnist. But with the Giants on the road to their first NL pennant in decades, things were looking hopeful. And then...
to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
The 1989 Loma Prieta quake changed many priorities for the city and its voters. Many people needed help that a ballpark just wouldn't give. Proposition P in 1989 failed by fewer than 2,000 votes. Lurie now turned his focus exclusively to the South Bay. He began playing the cities of Santa Clara and San Jose against each other. Initially, the favor was for Santa Clara, as this image of Bob Lurie wearing a Santa Clara Giants hat shows. And look, I don't mean to demean anyone, but Bob, if you're the owner of a baseball team and you wear your cap like this, I mean, you're clearly acting the part of the villain, right? The Santa Clara site was alongside a to-be-upgraded Highway 237 between Lafayette Street and Great America Parkway, with huge parking lots across both the highway and other streets.
This is Santa Clara, and this is where the Giants Stadium would have been. As you can imagine, it's not much to look at here. It's all low-slung office buildings. But if you look the other way in the direction I'm facing, it's good to know that Santa Clara didn't give up on their pro sports stadium dreams.
However, in 1992, San Jose's plan was officially chosen by the Giants and pushed with yet another voting proposal, this time to Santa Clara County voters. This plan was in the northeast corner of San Jose, right on the border of Milpitas, on Zanker Road between Route 237 and Tasman Drive.
Well, down here in San Jose, I'll admit Coyote Creek's a pretty backdrop, although it's not exactly McCovey Cove. And the land here that would have been the Giants Stadium, well, now of course it's office buildings, part of the big Cisco complex here.
This rendering purports to be that San Jose ballpark proposal, although I can't find an original source for that. However, that does appear to be Coyote Creek up there in the upper right, and the groves around it did represent the area at the time. The campaigning was strong, and I just can't get over this image of Orlando Cepeda wearing a prototype San Jose jersey. That hat is just awful, but I kinda like that jersey. The actual San Jose Giants may want to consider it. Of course, we all know what happened. The June 1992 proposal to Santa Clara County voters failed, and at the end of 1992, ironically, Lurie announced that he would sell the team to Tampa Bay investors. But MLB encouraged Lurie to sell to local investors, partially because they didn't want it to be all National League teams along the Sun Coast, from Miami to Tampa Bay to Atlanta. Peter McGowan's group bought the Giants, and they never looked back. They presented a new ballpark plan in 1996. And of course, it was at that originally identified site at China Basin, and it was a baseball-only stadium plan, evoking classic stadium ambiance. And it was privately financed, using many sources, including potentially lifetime seats. And of course, it had something about home run balls going into the water.
It was a long and winding road to get here to Oracle Park, but you know, in the end, the Giants might have been a little lucky it took that long. They were able to get the right ownership and have a stadium that came at the right time. And they put together some of the best ideas in some rather bad proposals. that eventually got them this beautiful stadium.
And hey, you know, if you really wanted to see those freeway ramps from the 7th and Townsend plan, you still can. Kind of.
Well, this video's been just about long enough. You know what to do now. Go ahead, hit like and follow to get more of that Oracle Park and Giants Prospects content. I'll see you next time.